Well, Merry Christmas Eve, all you kids out there. I'm so excited. I know you are. I bet you are. I bet you can't wait to go to sleep tonight and wake up in the morning on Christmas Day. But for now, on Christmas Eve, I thought that we would have some special time together. But I want to start us out with a funny poem because I think it's always good to laugh. And this one is a little tiny poem by Shel Silverstein called Snowball. So wait for the joke, it's at the end. I made myself a snowball, as perfect as could be. I thought I'd keep it as a pet and let it sleep with me. So I made it some pajamas and a pillow for its head. Then last night it ran away, but first it wet the bed. Okay, did you get the joke at the end there? So the gnome and I were laughing. This is my friend the gnome. Now, I want to tell you the reason that why we're all here today, and that, of course, is our Christmas story. And I know you guys know it, and I know I tell it to you every year, but it's such a beautiful story. I'd like to tell it to you again. So let's see. I am going to, there we go. So I wish you were all here. I have to tell you kids, I miss doing children's time with you because I'm dying to ask you questions and I know that I can't. But if I could, I would say, how many of you know how this starts? And of course, the story starts with Mary and Joseph. Mary and Joseph, who found out that they were part of a census, which means they had to say who they were and whose family they came from, but they had to do it back where Joseph was born. And that meant that, as you can see from the picture, that meant that they had to travel a long way to Bethlehem. Now, Mary at this point is pregnant with Jesus. And so she is on that donkey. And you can imagine how difficult that trip might be for her. She either had to walk or she had to ride on a donkey. So very uncomfortable for poor Mary. But they traveled, and the next slide will show you they had, they had a long travel, and here they are at the end. At the end, Joseph helps her off, and they are in Bethlehem, and I'm sure that they were thinking, hooray, we made it. But when they got there, they found that there wasn't anywhere to stay because everybody who had ever been born in Bethlehem had to go back to their town of origin. So everything was full. Everything was full up. So they looked and they looked and they looked. And finally, an innkeeper took pity on them. And he said, look, I don't have anywhere in the inn, but I can let you stay in our barn. In our barn, there's a stable in the back, and it's got all the animals, but at least it's warm and it'll give you a place to sleep. So they went to, and you can see from this lovely picture, they went to the stable and they stayed with all of the animals. And, for those of you who have ever been in a barn, there's lots of straw, there's lots of animals, and they have certain smells, but they're also usually pretty nice, the animals because they know people. So I imagine bedding down was probably not great, but it wasn't the worst thing. And they got there and they made a little nest for themselves in the barn. And lo and behold, Mary knew that it was time to have the baby. So she gave birth to Jesus. And Jesus was born in a barn. So when your mother says, hey, what were you, born in a barn? You can say, well, Jesus was born in a barn. So really, it's not that bad, Mom. But Jesus was born. And in the meantime, while all of that was happening, there were some shepherds. And they were out on the hillside, not too far away from Bethlehem. And they were keeping an eye out on all of their sheep. And it was their job to stay awake for this time to make sure that no wolves or coyotes or any of the wild animals that might want to eat their sheep could get them. So they were keeping watch over their flocks by night. And you see the angel in the picture. And the angel appeared to them. And the first thing angels always say is, don't be afraid, which makes you think that they must be pretty amazing to see. And the angel says, don't be afraid. I bring you this amazing news of a baby that is born, and that baby is God come to earth. And if you follow this star, you will find this baby wrapped in swaddling clothes and laying in a manger in a feeding trough. And then and here's that beautiful picture, all of the heavenly hosts started to sing praise to God. So there were those shepherds amazed in that starry, starry sky. There was a whole host of angels singing and praising God and telling them, get moving, go and find the baby. And they did. And so they ran to the stable. And the next picture will show you, yeah, there they are with the baby and Mary and Joseph. And I'm sure that they told everybody who would listen on the way all about what they saw and what the angels told them. And you can see the light of the star shining down on the baby and the mom and the dad, Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus. And there are those all the beautiful animals and the shepherds. It must have been an amazing, amazing thing to have happen. And also in the meantime, there were wise men who had followed the star as well. They were scholars. They were like professors nowadays, I suppose, who had studied the stars, and they knew that baby was coming, and they knew how important that baby was, and that baby was God come to earth. And so they showed up as well, and they saw the baby, and they offered gifts to Jesus and to Mary and Joseph, gifts of gold and frankincense and myrrh. These were all things that would help that baby later in life and help that little family and protect that little family. So there we have a picture of this beautiful family with everybody, the angels and the animals and the wise men and the shepherds and the Holy Family. And that is the story that we tell. And this is why we call it Christmas, because it is the time that we remember Christ. We remember the birth of Jesus. And it is such an amazing thing, the idea that love came down and the light of that star and the light of that baby changed our world. And yes, this is my favorite way to end this story. Mary, the mom who went through all of this and brought this baby into the world, she treasured up all of these stories, all of the things that the shepherds and the wise men and everyone told her. She treasured all of those things up in her heart, and she thought and thought and thought about them. And all of these things were a treasure to her, especially the baby Jesus. So there we are. That is the story. And that is why we get together. That is why we tell this story. It is so, so, so important that we remember the love that we know to be true, and that who that is, and that is of Jesus that brought that to us. So with that in mind, if you want to sing along, Carol is going to play both versions of Away in the Manger for you. Sorry about that. I forgot to unmute. Okay, kids, I have a great story. Now we're talking about the light that Jesus brought to the world, but one of the ways that we show the light of Jesus in our lives is being kind. And I have a story for you, and this is not your letters to Santa. This is Santa's letter to you. It's called A Letter from Santa. So here it goes. Mostly children write to me near Christmas. Thank you. It's nice to get so many letters, but let me give you a few tips. Let me tell you one or two things to help you write your letter. First of all, I don't really have a naughty and nice book, and I often wonder where that idea came from. Maybe parents or maybe teachers. But I do have a be kind list. Be kind to others. Be kind to animals. Be kind even to those who are sometimes mean to you. Being kind changes things. Just look around you. You will see how a little kindness can make things so much better. And then Santa says, a share, a smile, a nod, a friendly hi, letting others join in. Don't tease, don't be mean, and try to say please. And please don't send me a long list of toys you would like to have. What's better is to tell me about the things that you like to do. Are you an outdoorsy type? Do you make or bake things? Are you a reader? Do you dance or do you sing? Do you play games? Do you like sports? Do you like dressing up? Do you like to paint or draw? Tell me about those things. My last little tip is something much easier. Most children like to leave me a treat, and I love those treats, but I love them even more if they're homemade. Homemade is so nice. If you take the trouble to make me something or bake me something, a biscuit, a cake, a little sandwich, or a picture, or something you made out of a card or paper or even Play-Doh, well, we all love those little things. Me, the reindeer, the elves, we just love to see those clever things that you have made. I hope this helps you with your next letter. Ho, ho, ho. Merry Christmas. Love, Santa. And now, Carol is going to play another song for you. Oh, I love that one. Thank you, Carol. I am going to tell you one of my favorite Christmas fairy tales now. It's called The Elves and the Shoemaker. Once upon a time, there was a hardworking shoemaker who owned a little tiny shop at the edge of town. He was a really nice man, and he always did the best he could, and he made beautiful shoes. But times were tough, and the leather that the shoemaker used to make his shoes was very expensive. So after buying all the things that he and his wife needed for their house, at the end, during this tough time, he only had enough money to purchase enough leather to make one more pair of shoes. Oh, he sighed. Well, it will have to be the finest pair of shoes that I can make. I'll start on it first thing tomorrow when the sun is bright and my mind is fresh. And off he went to bed. But as he drifted off to sleep, the shoemaker dreamed that the shoes he made were the most wonderful shoes that anyone in the village had ever seen. He saw a bright, shiny buckle that he carefully crafted in silver, and the leather was so finely stitched with tiny little seams that were so small it was like they were invisible. The tops of the shoes had the most perfect curl on it that it made that shoemaker giggle. Now, when he awoke the next morning, he couldn't wait to make the shoes that he saw in his dream. So he went into his shop, and as soon as he sat down at his workbench, he noticed the most amazing thing, and that was right in front of his eyes was the very shoes that he had dreamed about, even with the perfect little curl on the front. So he called his wife, "Oh, come quick." And she said, "My goodness, those are the most beautiful shoes I've ever seen. How did you make them so quickly?" "Well, I don't think I did. I dreamed about them." Surely I didn't make them in my sleep." The shoemaker and his wife looked at the shoes, and then they looked at each other, and they burst out laughing, and they jumped for joy. And just then, someone came into the shop. A man had been passing through town, and he needed a new pair of shoes, and he said to them, "I have heard that you make the finest shoes in all the land." And well, what a wonderful compliment. And the man caught sight of the shoes and he said, "Oh, those are wonderful. I must try them on." And so he slipped them on and they fit him perfectly. The stranger was so pleased with the shoes that he bought them immediately, and he offered twice the price that that the shoemaker asked of him. He said, "No, no, I can't ask for more perfect shoes. Take the money, and I wish you both a Merry Christmas." And with those words, the stranger was out the door. Well, the shoemaker and his wife were so pleased. They could not believe their good fortune. "Well, we have to celebrate," laughed the shoemaker's wife. "I'm going to take some of this money and buy us a fine supper." And he said, "Don't take too much. I need to buy more leather for the next pair of miraculous shoes." So she only took enough just to purchase a lovely meal. And with the rest of the money, the shoemaker was able to buy enough leather for 2 pairs of shoes. So after dinner, oh, he was very tired. What a day. So he decided to just cut out the leather and just get started with the shoes that he was imagining. And then he went to bed and hoped to make a fresh start in the morning. And once again, he had a beautiful dream. And this time he saw 2 pairs of beautiful shoes. And again, the stitching was tiny and flawless. The leather had beautiful, intricate designs and details. Oh, they were so pretty. The shoemaker knew no one in the village had ever seen anything quite as beautiful as that. And when he woke from the dream, he ran in to make them, but there they were again, right before his eyes, just like in the dream. "Oh, I can't believe it." Well, the shoemaker's wife heard him, so she came running in and she said, "What happened?" And she saw the shoes and she was just breathless. Well, they were so pleased, so happy, but what a mystery. But just then the door opened, and this time 2 customers walked into the shop. They looked at the 2 new pairs and they smiled. "Well, this is exactly what I've been looking for," said the first customer. And when he tried the shoes on, they fit him perfectly. And the second customer was one of the fine ladies of the town, and she fell in love with that second pair of shoes. "Oh, I can't believe what I'm seeing," she said. "This pair will match my new gown that I just had made. They are perfect in every way." So they paid handsomely for each pair of shoes. They left the store, and my goodness, the shoemaker and his wife, they were just stunned. What a miracle. They couldn't believe how quickly those mysterious shoes sold, just within minutes. So that evening, the shoemaker and his wife enjoyed another nice meal. What a relief in such a tough time. And later that night, the shoemaker once again cut out leather and set it aside to work on in the morning. And he went to bed with a full belly and a happy heart and hope in his mind and joy in his heart. And as he dreamed that night, he saw the leather he bought forming itself into beautiful shoes as if by magic. But the more he dreamt, he could see that the leather was actually being worked by little tiny hands, tiny, tiny hands. And when the shoemaker awoke in the morning, "Have you seen them? Have you seen the shoes? Are they there?" Well, they both quickly ran to the workbench, and sure enough, there were 4 pairs of elegant, gorgeous shoes. "Well, this is amazing," said the shoemaker's wife, "but how is it happening? You can't make 4 pairs of shoes in one day." The shoemaker shook his head. "I can't be sure, but last night in my dream, I saw tiny, tiny hands working the leather and stitching the stitches." As the shoemaker shrugged his shoulders, what a mystery. 4 customers hurried in, and not surprisingly, they bought all the shoes right away. "I think our money troubles might be over," the shoemaker said to his wife, "but we can't let the success go to our heads. We have to share this light. We have to share this joy and happiness." Well, for several weeks, these mysterious activities continued in the middle of the night. But the more he dreamt, the more the shoemaker saw of the little hands that worked the shoes. And by then it was almost Christmas Day. The shoemaker and his wife gave great thanks for all their good fortune, but they just didn't know who was helping them. So the shoemaker said to his wife, Martha, I think it's about time we found out who is doing this tremendous favor for us. And she said, I quite agree. We need to make sure that the mysterious stranger has a wonderful Christmas, a Christmas as wonderful as ours is going to be this year. So they agreed that they would stay awake that night, just like you might want to this Christmas Eve night, to see the stranger and see if they could in some way thank that stranger. So they hid behind a bookcase with just a tiny bit of light. And as the clock struck midnight, the shoemaker and his wife were amazed at what they saw, because it wasn't one mysterious stranger, but two tiny elves, maybe a little bit like this. Two tiny elves with tiny little hands, but they had barely a stitch of clothing on and just old worn out rags on their feet. See how they have little feet that need a little help? Well, that's why I saw tiny hands in my dreams, whispered the shoemaker. Look at how quickly they work and how beautifully. It's a miracle. Oh, they are the sweetest looking creatures I've ever seen, said the shoemaker's wife. They're like tiny little children, small enough that I could almost fit them into my pocket. Well, when the two elves had finished their work, they left quickly and quietly the way they came. And the shoemaker and his wife just looked in disbelief. The sun was just coming up. So the shoemaker's wife got breakfast going while the shoemaker took the shoes and opened the shop for the day. Later that day, the shoemaker's wife said, I've been thinking, oh, it's a shame that those sweet little elves, they work so hard, but they don't have any proper shoes or clothing for themselves. I thought about the same thing all day, said the shoemaker. I am going to take some of these scraps of leather and I'm going to make those little elves some brand new shoes just for them. Well, I will make them each a suit of fine clothing, said the shoemaker's wife. It won't take but a moment because they're so small. It won't take long to make it all. So they worked all evening and they made the little elves a tiny set of clothes. And by the time midnight fell, each elf had a little pair of pants, a little shirt, a hat, and an overcoat so that they would stay warm. And the shoemaker even created tiny, tiny little pairs of shoes, just the right size for their little elfin feet. Oh, these clothes are just perfect for our helpers. I can't wait to see what happens when they see their little Christmas outfits. Oh, I hope that they fit and that they suit our friends. I'm so grateful to them, said the shoemaker. And so they snuck behind the bookshelf again and they waited for the elves to arrive. Oh, their hearts were beating quickly. They were so excited. And the clock struck midnight and the elves came in. And the shoemaker and his wife held their breath. They hoped that they could share the joy that the elves had shared with them. And as soon as those little elves got to the workbench, they saw the fine sets of clothing. Hooray! The elves cried as they touched each beautiful little piece of clothing, and they quickly dressed in their new clothes, maybe a little bit like this, with clothes and a little hat. Well, they were so delighted, the shoemaker and his wife, to see the elves celebrating. After all, the elves had helped them when they really desperately needed help. So after lots of joyful dancing around the workbench in their beautiful new togs, the elves turned and with a giggle and a laugh, they left the shoemaker's shop. And their tiny little laugh could be heard in the crisp night air as they disappeared through the window. Well, the shoemaker and his wife never saw the elves again, but they had made so much money from selling the elves' shoes that they were able to buy lots of fine leather and keep the shop going by themselves. And they were never struggling again in the way that they did. They learned so much from those elves and they had a wonderful Christmas, but they were able to share their Christmas joy, not only with the elves, but with the rest of the town. They never, ever forgot those sweet little magical elves. Every now and then, they would catch on the drift of the wind, they would hear the giggling of little elves. And whenever they heard that, the shoemaker would say, "Merry Christmas, my little friends." And that, my dears, is the story of the Christmas elves. I love that story. It's one of my favorite Christmas stories, because the elves were able to help the shoemaker and his wife in a tough time when they were working hard, but they just needed some help. The elves were a light in the life of the shoemaker and his wife, and the shoemaker and his wife returned the favor and became a light and a kindness for the elves. So, what did we learn from the story? Well, I hope that you could be a light in the life of the people around you this week, too. We talk a lot about light at Christmas, the star that the wise men followed, the light from the angels that surprised the shepherds, the light that Jesus brought into the world. That is the kind of light that we want to be, a light of love and kindness and sharing for everyone around us. So in those moments when you get frustrated or you get angry, Jesus is really a great person to pray to. He felt all the feelings that you have, and he understands what that feeling feels like because he was a person too. And his light helps you and me to calm back down because that light is all about love. And remember that that's something you can learn from Jesus, and that kindness and light and love can be your superpower. Woohoo! Kindness, I hope, will always be your superpower. Be the light, kids. Okay, and with light in mind, Carol is going to play one of the happiest light songs I know for you right now. So sing along as she plays This Little Light of Mine. Thank you, Carol. That was beautiful. All right, I have a little, just not a very long one, but a cute little poem for you, and it's called The Magic of Christmas. Joy to the world, the carolers sang out as last-minute shoppers scurried about, desperately seeking that one special gift that would give Christmas morning a magical lift. As an old man stood standing, listening to the song, midst all the madness of the bustling throng, in a shaky, hoarse voice, he began to join in, singing the words of that famous old hymn. One by one, people stopped with their madness to join with the old man for a moment of gladness. By the time the carolers finished with singing the song, the whole throng was united as they all sang along. As if by magic from out of the sky, church bells rang out from a chapel nearby. And when it was over, the people greeted each other with messages of goodwill that they shared with one another. You see, that magical gift the shoppers sought for so long was not in the buying or the scurrying along. The magical gift so desperately sought was the spirit of Christmas, which can never be bought. Thank you to Tom Krause because he wrote that, and I love that. Okay. We have a little closing prayer, and Reinhardt's going to put it on the screen, and Carol is going to play us out right afterwards. So this is our closing prayer. May you be filled with the wonder of Mary, the obedience of Joseph, the joy of the angels, the eagerness of the shepherds, the determination of the Magi, and the peace of the Christ child. Almighty God, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, bless you now and forever. Amen.